Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast presented by State Farm. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing actually at this moment on Sunday night. We did a whole podcast that we taped before the Super Bowl. Then we had some late news, which we'll talk about in a second. So we're going to talk about this late news involving Anthony Davis here, and then we're going to put the rest of the podcast that we already taped on the back end of it. And as an educated 2025 media consumer, you'll understand. And then later on the show, we have an interview with James Harden. All right, joining us from New York City, Tim Bontemps.
Hello, everybody.
Joining us from Dallas, Texas, and certainly we'll be talking later in this podcast about all the stuff that happened in Dallas on Saturday and the interview that the governor of the team, Patrick Dumont, gave on Sunday. But first, here's Ben MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. Wendy, I regret to inform you that your hair looked a lot better earlier today.
Yeah, I know. It's late at night. I don't even really think we need to do this edition of the pod, but I got outvoted.
I'm sorry. Anthony Davis being out multiple weeks at the minimum due to a left adductor strain after playing basically 3/4 of a game for the Mavericks following a trade where he was the headliner of the return for Luka Doncic, who got traded in large part because the Mavericks believed his body was breaking down. With Davis's unfortunate history of durability issues, yeah, this is a pretty major development.
He got hurt. It happens.
Yeah, unfortunately, again, his history is it happens a lot with Anthony Davis, and he is the guy that they targeted to get for a 25-year-old generational superstar who, yes, he's missed a ton of games this year. Yes, he's had constant condition issues. But yes, he was fresh off leading this team to the finals. This trade, regardless of what happened the rest of this season, is as huge a risk as Nico Harris and the Mavericks GM and that franchise could take. And this is a very unfortunate reminder that the risk isn't just giving up potentially one of the best players of all time. I think that's a fairly significant development. I'm sorry. Bontemps?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with you when you're talking about Nico Harrison saying there's a 3 or 4 year runway on this trade, and AD, gets hurt halfway through the first game, could be out a month, could miss up 12 games, will not be eligible. Latest guy who's not eligible for all NBA, all but certainly as a result of this. And, the Mavs are sitting one game ahead of Golden State, Phoenix, and Sacramento. Sacramento, who they play Monday, Golden State, who they play Wednesday, for the final spots in the play-in situation in the Western Conference. I mean, there's a very real possibility that by the time Anthony Davis comes back, the Dallas Mavericks are not in the play-in situation in the Western Conference, and they could be looking at a repeat of the situation they were in 2 years ago when they're sitting on the outside looking in and looking at being in the lottery rather than making a playoff run. When you just traded for a guy who's 6 or 7 years older than the guy you just traded, and you talked about his durability issues, it's pretty concerning.
Well, and one slight difference from the situation 2 years ago, and look, we got to let this season play out, but Lively's going to be out for most, if not all, the rest of the regular season. We'll see when AD is able to return, but it's not going to be for at least a little while. But hypothetically speaking, if that situation plays out the way you just said, they miss the play-in, which is within the realm of possibility in an extraordinarily competitive West. They go into the lottery. The biggest difference between that situation and the one 2 years ago is 2 years ago, the concern was, oh, bleep. If we don't get this thing turned around, Luka might have good reason to want out. Whereas now it's like, oh, bleep. Luka was happy to stay and we couldn't wait to get rid of him. And now look what happened.
It's a long leap to think that they're going to be out of the play-in.
Brian, they're one game ahead of 11th. The guy misses a month, he's going to miss half of their remaining schedule.
And listen, like they also they're right back in the situation that they were in before in terms of they don't have Luka. and they don't have the guy who different position, but the star that they brought in instead of Luka. And this is a team that was really, really struggling, since Christmas. I mean, it's crazy. It seems so long ago now. They'd won 14 of 17 going into Christmas. Luka got hurt. And look, there's been a lot of other stuff that's happened since then. Kyrie certainly has missed some time, but you're putting a ton on his plate as like the only real ball handler that you are excited about having the ball in his hands. But I'm dumbfounded that you think this is a ho-hum type of situation, Wendy.
It's not ho-hum. It's a bad break. What else is there to say?
Well,
it's a bad break.
What's there to say is that they just traded for this guy, claiming that their window was now, and that the prior guy was too hurt. He
also
and
played
not
76
conditioned.
games last year. He had missed like only 3 games this year. Like, he's in great shape.
I mean, he had an abdominal injury when the trade was made days before the deadline, too.
Well, and last year also was the first year in many years that Anthony Davis was actually healthy enough to play 76 games. I mean,
no, it's the first time he's ever played 76 games.
Yeah. I mean, Anthony Davis's entire career has been defined by him being a guy who is, in addition to being a great player, someone who is regularly missing chunks of time and leaving games because of injuries.
And people are going to hear you say this in a few minutes, but earlier on, you basically said, hey, this was unfortunately, and, for better and worse, it was the whole Anthony Davis experience in his Mavericks debut, because he was absolutely dominant, and then unfortunately it ended early due to injury. But they're in 8th now, but it's only like Bontemps said, they're only 1 loss ahead of 9, 10, and 11. And this is a team that was 19 and 10 going into Christmas.
Yeah, 9 and 15 since.
It's and Lively's out. Like I would say 2 of their 3 most important players are going to miss.
So 2 of their most important players out. So if they lose,
Brian,
most teams would lose.
This is a baffling.
Holy smokes.
Is this a situation where you are just very annoyed that you have to work?
You're beating him over the head because a player got hurt. Okay,
no, we're not.
Brian,
We're assessing.
Hold on. They traded for a player in Anthony Davis.
But they could have traded for a player who'd never been hurt in his life, and he could have had his groin injury. That happens.
No, Brian. I
understand. Here's what I think is going on. The world has decided that the Mavericks are stupid, and now that Anthony Davis gets hurt, they're just hopping on top of him, beating him all in the head that they're stupid.
Brian,
he got hurt. It happens. It happens.
The Dallas Mavericks made one of the most staggering trades in the history of the NBA, and their justification for making the trade was that it made them better today, and that they were going to be a team that had a better chance of winning today, right now. Trading for Anthony Davis, who was hurt at the time and who has a history of being hurt. And in the first game he played, he had an unbelievable half and now could miss a month. That's what happened.
I appreciate your stance, Wendy, because I've been accused a lot recently of being Nico Harrison's mouthpiece, which, by the way, for the last few years, my critical coverage of Luka Doncic raised the ire of Nico Harrison as much as anybody, I can assure you. But so I appreciate you stepping up and trying to take that title that I certainly do not want.
Well, I'm not being his mouthpiece. I'm just saying it's bad luck. Anthony Davis got hurt. Bad luck.
No one is saying it's not bad luck, but you're also acting like it's no big deal that this happened.
Oh, and again, this is a big deal, but oh my gosh, those stupid Mavericks.
Is it not going to
Mavericks? They got unlucky.
Are the Mavericks not going to be obliterated if they miss the play-in?
Of course they will be.
Okay.
Is Nico Harrison potentially going to lose his job if they miss the play-in?
Wendy, this is not just any old trade.
You go to the lottery, and you see the 14 teams at the lottery, there's a couple of teams there that are tanking that knew they were going to be bad. But a lot of times, 6 or 7 of those teams had just crap injury luck for the season. And sometimes the difference between being in the finals and being in the lottery can just be injuries.
And if the Dallas Mavericks hadn't traded Luka Doncic and they were sitting there and Luka Doncic missed a bunch of time with injuries,
maybe Luka will pull his calf again in 2 weeks. And then you will say, well, those Lakers should have known.
Brian,
come on, guys.
Ryan,
I
if
can't
the
believe
Dallas
this.
Mavericks had been sitting there with Luka Doncic having missed a bunch of time with injuries, and Kyrie Irving missing time with back injuries, and they missed the play-in, we would have said, "Hey, Dallas had an awesome team. They had bad luck. They missed the they had
Okay. So Luca's injury is bad luck. 80's injury is stupid. Got it. Let me write that down.
Wendy,
Right,
you're
it's
acting
stupid.
like
Okay.
this
No, I
is
got it
some-
now. I got it.
No, you're
I
acting like
understand.
this
I
is
got
just
it.
any old trade. Any old
I got
trade.
it.
There was a protest with 1,000
Well,
some
but
people
okay,
yesterday.
obviously it's a big trade, but
Nico
it's
Harrison has received death threats. And by the
I got
way,
it.
let me just double down on that reporting because I've been ripped because the Dallas Police Department's told some wannabe journalists that, oh, we haven't had any, there's no known threats to us. Folks, the Mavericks have security that's literally been at the highest level of American law enforcement. The threats did not raise themselves to where they felt like they needed to be reported to police. But I guarantee you, and I've heard from multiple sources that he's received death threats. By the way, I've received a couple death threats. I didn't report them to the police, but this is how pissed off people are about this trade. And that's your reaction is bad luck. I mean,
Yeah.
the
it's
circumstances.
just an odd position.
What
Part
is
of
the
it-
reaction
take
supposed to be? The reaction is supposed to be what? Dallas, the Mavericks are stupid. That's what you want me to say.
No one is
I've
saying.
never said stupid,
Yeah,
but
we
you
That's
would
can
what
say
you're
that.
saying. No, that's
It
what
was-
you guys are saying. You're saying they're stupid.
Okay, don't put words in my mouth here because I'm the one who's got to live on the ground here, first of all.
Well,
Now, I will say the logic behind the deal was extraordinarily risky and questionable. You can absolutely say those things.
okay.
I'd say it's not a trade that I would have made.
I think it's risky because Luka could win multiple MVPs and multiple championships. That's why it's risky.
But again,
Yes.
part of the rationale for the trade was that they got rid of a guy that they couldn't rely on. And they traded him for a guy who has a history of getting hurt, and he got hurt in the first game he played in. Doesn't mean it's not bad luck. It doesn't mean that they should be pilloried that he got hurt or that Anthony Davis should be drawn.
They're getting pilloried already. I've already seen it. I've already been watching it
pilloried
happen.
for the trade for a week. That's not
I know.
what we're
Well,
saying.
we want to pillory them for
The
the
other
trade.
thing
Fine.
here, this is a trade. You traded a guy who, and we'll see, maybe they end up being right about Luka breaking down, but you have the chance to have a generational player for the next decade or so. And they said, nope, we don't trust him. We can't rely on him.
Got
We
it.
don't want him. We want Anthony Davis, who is an
Got it.
amazing player. But by doing that, by Nico Harrison.
And if Anthony Davis has 6 groin injuries in the next 3 years, then it's a fair assessment.
But by Nico Harrison's own words, the timeline is now 3 to 4 years. So
So the next month he's going to be out.
The only way this trade can ultimately really be justified is if the Mavericks win a title in that 3 to 4 year time frame. And so it is a massive dent to the
But
hopes of
that
doing
was true before he
25%
pulled
of
his
that time.
groin. All that was true before he pulled his groin.
But again, I want to refer back to 5 minutes ago when you said it's a stretch that they'll miss the play-in. It's not a stretch.
No, I didn't say it was a stretch. I said
yes,
it was a
you
leap.
did. You
I said it was a
literally
leap.
said. You literally said
whatever.
it's a
leap.
stretch to
Leaping.
say they're going to miss
More
the
than a
play-in.
stretch, a leap.
Right, well, I'm
The
just
reason-
saying you've already decided that
No.
they might miss the playoffs. You've already
The
decided. it.
reason it's a relevant injury is because the best player on the team, which he is now out for half the remaining schedule, and they're
Right,
one game
well,
out of 11.
And if anybody in between 6 and 10 would have that happen, they'd
But
be
it's
facing
not
the same
anybody.
situation.
That's not anybody.
The-
I understand. I'm
chances of a
sorry
guy
you had to
getting
work
injury-
again, but this is it's a ridiculous position to take.
Fellas,
Ridiculous position.
I think on this one, we can just agree to disagree and let folks get to the rest of the podcast.
All right. Okay. When it comes to groin injuries, just like any other strain, soft tissue injury, there's grades 1, 2, and 3. This very much seems like it's not a grade 1 because a grade 1 injury is typically a week or 2 day to day, which is what it sounded like after the game.
Yeah.
Very clearly, this is a grade 2 at least. And they have to hope it's a 2 because if it's a 3, you got real big problems. But hopefully it's not a 3. I think that would have been more apparent. But if it's a grade 2 sprain, that's a 3 to 5 to 6 week injury, depending on various people. So
I believe we will know more on Monday about the severity and about the potential treatment options, which knock on wood that it's rest.
Well, and it also just puts the Mavs in an even tighter spot when it comes to Kyrie Irving, who's still playing with this back injury and remains the only ball handler of real consequence on the roster. So, well,
I would say that if I were the Lakers, I would make sure that calf is in good shape.
No kidding.
For Luka. That's what I would say.
No kidding.
So hopefully it is only a grade 2 strain. Also, the Mavericks do get a small break, and that the All-Star break with a week off is coming up, which now AD is not going to be able to play in the All-Star game, so there'll have to be a replacement.
And hey, there was one sliver of good news on the evening injury report that the Mavericks put out, and that's PJ Washington is questionable for the Kings on Monday when he had to exit due to a sprained ankle Saturday afternoon. So
the only good thing, I guess, for the Mavericks is that they do have 3 starter quality centers on their roster. So they are now down 2 of them.
I mean, it's obviously better for him to miss Anthony Davis for a while than Kyrie if you have to pick one of them, because there's just really no replacement for Kyrie. But it's still not great.
That's true.
And that, like I said, to me, the biggest impact of this, obviously the longer term issues of this are apparent. To me, it's just the more relevant thing is, Sacramento, I think, arguably got better at the deadline, even though they traded De'Aaron Fox. Golden State added Jimmy Butler. Those teams are sitting right behind them. Yeah. I mean, Phoenix, we'll see if they can ever get their act together. But,
I'm not so sure about Phoenix.
I'm not sure about that either.
Jimmy
but
Butler misses a lot of games due to injury.
Sure.
Are you gonna if he gets hurt? Are you gonna slap the Warriors?
I mean, they didn't mortgage their future on getting Jimmy Butler.
The Mavericks, we are assessing a situation and a historically unprecedented trade and all the various risks involved.
It just puts a spotlight on the fact that they're 9-15 since Christmas Day.
That's a fair thing to say.
The whole time that they've been out without Luka, and that's not a percentage going forward that's going to be good enough to make the playoffs. And if they're even 500 the rest of the way, they're probably not good enough to make the playoffs. So we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. But by the way, they play Sacramento Monday and they play Golden State Wednesday. Those were already huge games. They're even more so now that they've got those games at home without Anthony Davis.
I would just say that the parameters of the risk profile of what the Mavericks did were the same on Saturday as they are on Sunday.
I mean, yes, I would agree
and
with
that.
that.
And the fact that the star player gets an injury is the breaks of the game and the ebb and flow of the NBA season.
Well, again, we agree on that. The only thing I would say is that it is a bit ironic that part of the justification of the trade was because you couldn't rely on the other
I will
guy
accept
when you trade
I will
for this
accept
guy.
irony. Now we've come together. I will accept what you said about their record after Luka got hurt. I will accept irony. I will accept everything. I will not accept that it's some sort of catastrophe because
it's a catastrophe if they miss the playoffs.
Well, let's just
if a star player gets hurt, you miss the playoffs.
Brian,
that's life in the NBA.
It's a catastrophe if you miss the playoffs when you made a win now trade.
Wendy,
it happens.
Wendy, come on down and visit me, and let's just kind of. I need you to. I guess from Nebraska, you can't feel the heat that's in Texas right now because, brother, it's hot.
If the Dallas Mavericks miss the playoffs, that's going to be a catastrophe. You can say whatever else you want.
I mean, oh my.
That's got nothing to do with calling anybody idiots or pillorying.
If they miss if Anthony Davis is out, for a long period of time and they miss the playoffs because of that, that's a bad break. If they came back and Luka averages 37, 12, and 9, and the Lakers are in the Western Conference Finals and the Mavericks are home, that's a catastrophe.
Well,
so
I would say, frankly, either or. I mean, if we're being real.
Yeah. All right. Well,
it's hard to make a win now trade. Say you have a 3 to 4 year window and have one of those years be you missed the playoffs.
I know, but that could happen to anybody.
But it's not anybody. It's a team that's literally said that's their window.
I'm glad we're on the same page about irony. Let's take that as a
all right. Here comes the rest of the podcast.
Of the pod.
Here comes the rest of the podcast. At the rally protest, I guess the protest of the Luka trade that you were at,
I was not at the protest. I can assure you of that. I was getting videos from the protest.
Oh, okay. That makes me feel. I was wondering if you were getting those videos.
No,
Okay.
no. I got videos and I was getting kind of play-by-play update, especially every time that my name was mentioned in derisive chants.
Okay. See, that's interesting because I thought this is good information because I saw these videos and I thought they were chanting at you because you were standing there. They were just chanting at you. You weren't even there.
Correct. And I had I had a couple spies there, a couple of dads in the neighborhood brought their sons. I think they were there technically
Including, were your sons there protesting you as well?
absolutely no, absolutely not.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Talk about getting back at your old man. I can't directly relate to this, MacMahon. I will say that when LeBron went to Miami and then ESPN announced in a press release I was going to Miami, which, I was happy to go to ESPN. I wasn't so happy about the press release. And I had to live in Cleveland for another week. It was not an ideal time, including when I went to a game and people were shooting spitballs at me, but they never chanted at me. I have been jeered in mass by Dallas fans before, but not at a rally. Yeah. And when I was in Miami, when I started saying that I didn't think LeBron was going to stay, I had some uncomfortable times there, but never quite anything like this. So
yeah, listen, and it's like obviously you've been through that. It's not my first rodeo with fans being mad at me. I understand, and I understand that sometimes the facts, the truth, factual reporting is not always flattering. It's not always comfortable. It's not always what you want to hear. And messengers have been being blamed since the medieval times. When they're chanting, "Don't buy the book," I definitely appreciate the
Wonder Boy, by the way,
or the Wonder Boy, which is
there it is. Oh, there it is. Right behind you. Beautiful. It's the first I've noticed it.
Available for pre-order. I got to crank out that last chapter by Friday, though. And I mean, unbelievable material and about that.
Kayvon was asking where our copy is yesterday. She was like, "Where's the book?" I said, "The book's not out yet, but
I want to wait for the last chapter."
Enough.
No,
we got to get the chapter.
But and listen, obviously I was a bit player in the protest. Certainly, the vast majority of the venom was directed first and foremost at Nico Harrison. I mean, Fire Nico was, I would say, the predominant theme of this protest. And you talk about a surreal scene. This protest was being held in Victory Plaza. The estimates that I got was about 1,000 people. So that's a pretty large number of people filling this plaza right outside the arena. The plaza where this 24-foot statue of Dirk Nowitzki is erected, is overlooking this thing, right? Dirk fading away. The inscription on Dirk's statue says, "Loyalty never fades away." 21 letters representing 21 seasons of unflinching loyalty to the city of Dallas and loyalty from the Mavericks franchise back to Dirk. And I don't think anybody thought there was going to be 21 years of Luka, but the Mavericks fans certainly believed and hoped with every bit of their hearts that there would be a good 15 or so. And less than 7 is what it ended up being. And there was signs like loyalty faded away was one of the signs, just again, a whole lot of sell the team signs. And, so the Adelson family and Patrick Dumont, who married into the Adelson family and is now the governor of the Dallas Mavericks. He, I guess, obviously was getting updates on these protests, and I'm sure he's seen some of the footage and some of the videos, a ton of media attention on these things. And he decided to talk to a pal of the pod, Brad Townsend. And I would say essentially what Patrick Dumont did today was maybe the fire might be dying down just a bit. I mean, Anthony Davis had an amazing debut right up until, unfortunately, it ended early. Max Christie's looked amazing. They had a big win over the Houston Rockets. They were taking up signs and stuff. I guess the security at the entrances was pretty strict, but it was a very supportive atmosphere inside the arena. I mean,
I was not surprised. I was kind of surprised by that. I thought that it might be a negative atmosphere. It turns out the negativity was mostly outside.
Well, and again, I'm not up at the exits, but fans that I've heard from did say, hey, if you had a Fire Nico sign or T-shirts or any of that kind of stuff, the security was being a little bit, un-American. I don't know. Whatever you want to say, whatever, however you want to call that. But listen, like AD comes in and are you kidding me? Like, could you ask for, again, unfortunately, until he exited late in the third quarter with what they don't think will be like a major injury, he might miss a little bit of time, but talk about introducing yourself to Dallas and basically as he said, a friendly reminder of who Anthony Davis is. This dude had one of the most dominant halves that I've seen in a while. And the only NBA player or Maverick who's had more dominant half in recent memory has been Luka on a few occasions. Maybe a Kyrie like in the opener of the Western Conference Finals, but he comes out in the first 4+ minutes. he's swatting shots, grabbing rebounds. He has 4 buckets. The 4th bucket, he misses a contested layup, grabs that thing, dunks it with 2 hands. And, Ime Udoka calls timeout, chest bumps a couple teammates. He's waving his hands, looking at the stands, waving his hands. The crowd is going nuts. He points at the court, he shouts, "I'm here." I mean, it was like, whoa. Dude had like 24, 13, 5, and 3 in the
10 times more fiery than he was when LeBron broke the Kareem record.
True. but first half, I think it was 24, 13, 5, and 3 blocks. Like it was. So you've got that Max Christie. And Max Christie is so far like down the list of things people.
Yeah, he's like the 7th man, maybe 5th man.
No, I'm talking about in this trade. Like who else?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But like 21-year-old kid turns 22 Monday, and he's played 3 games. He's playing great. Had 23 points off the
By the
bench.
way, it was Klay Thompson's birthday on Saturday. Was there any festivities for that?
Yeah, so I didn't even know that.
There you go. Poor Klay. Totally.
There was a few other things going on. But Max Christie, plays amazing. Hits the dagger through. You've got it. Like, you got through the protests. It's been a really chaotic, unprecedentedly bizarre type of week. You get a little bit of good feeling. Like what an intro to the Dallas audience for AD, for Max Christie. And then Patrick Dumont comes out and gives Brad Townsend of the Dallas Morning News an extended interview. And listen.
Well, let me just say real quick before you read these quotes. You've been around Patrick more than I have. I've spent time with him on a couple of occasions. He has always come off as mild-mannered to me. Reasonable.
Correct. Same for me.
Reasonable, mild-mannered, chill. I've over the years I've gotten to spend time with owners in various settings, and sometimes you can figure out right away how competitive somebody is or aloof somebody is. I mean, you spend 10 minutes with Steve Ballmer, you will feel his energy, you will feel the way he operates. You spend 10 minutes with Mark Cuban, which we've all spent hours with Mark Cuban, but you will feel his personality. You spend minutes with Tony Ressler, the Atlanta Hawks, for example. There's no way you walk away from 10 minutes to Tony Ressler and not understand how competitive this guy is and the way he looks at the world. You spend 10 minutes with Patrick Dumont, you get, a very pleasant, thoughtful, mild-mannered guy. So I just wanted to set that before these quotes because I've never heard anything like this out of him. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm going to focus on one quote in particular. Now,
well, I don't actually even like this quote. I'm going to let you go in your route because this is your team. But I don't even care about this quote, but go ahead.
But no, the thing he had to say, because there's this ridiculous conspiracy theory. They've been going, this is
okay,
the
that
franchise so they could move it to Vegas, which again was never going to happen. The NBA was never going to allow that. It was a conspiracy theory because people could not understand why they traded Luka, even though I spelled out within 30 minutes of the trade the reasoning. They gave up on him.
Nico on the record within 30 minutes of the trade.
Well, that was defense wins championships, but it was the conditioning concerns. It was the belief that he was going to break down. It was the fact they didn't believe in him. They didn't want to build a culture around him. And your superstar is always going to be the most impactful thing in the culture of the franchise. So he had to say that part. Then he had to say he believed in Nico. If I was advising him from a PR perspective, I would have said it there. He talked a whole lot more. And this one is just I mean, if you don't believe me about the conditioning stuff and all that being a concern, listen to this. If you look at the greats in the league, the people you and I grew up with, Jordan, Bird, Kobe, Shaq, they worked really hard every day with a singular focus to win. And if you don't have that, it doesn't work. And if you don't have that, you shouldn't be part of the Dallas Mavericks. That's who we want. I'm unwavering on this. The entire organization knows this. This is how I operate outside of basketball. This is the only way to be competitive and win. If you want to take a vacation, don't do it with us. Whoa. So basically they said Luka's chilling, eating, having a good old time, getting, large and thinking he's in charge. And no, we're shipping him off to LA. But let me just break down how insane of a quote this is. First of all, the greats who grew up, okay, Larry Bird was a legendary beer drinker whose body broke down after a dozen years in the NBA. An all-time great, but like Larry Bird was not the epitome of discipline.
Yeah, he had a bad back.
Okay. I know a legendary beer drinker when I see one. Trust me, Larry Bird could throw some brewskis down. Are you kidding me? What are we talking about? Like his post-game routine involved multiple cervezas, although he domestic crap, but still. Yeah.
Again, okay.
No. Let me go a little bit.
But he's not talking about Larry Bird's body fat. He's talking about his competitiveness. They
work really hard every day with a singular focus to win.
Well, Larry Bird did work very hard. All right, go ahead.
And Luka works hard on his game, but you're talking about the preparation, you're talking about the conditioning. These are the reasons that the Mavericks gave up.
I know. That was 40 years ago, buddy.
Shaq
I know.
famously played his way into shape every year, would need to shed weight every single training camp.
MacMahon, I would respectfully say, I understand where you're coming from, but I think the point I think we should be making is that this was not just a Nico Harrison decision, right?
No.
Nico Harrison can either Patrick Dumont agreed with this separately, or Nico Harrison over time talking to Patrick Dumont, they came to a consensus that organizationally, the Mavericks at the highest level did not believe in Luka Doncic as a player that they were going to be building around for the rest of this decade.
And I will also just say that those two were not alone in that belief. It certainly is not a consensus throughout the organization. That much I can absolutely promise you. There are people with the Mavericks who are just like, what have we done? But it was not just Nico and Patrick Dumont. That I can promise you.
All right, let me read a few more quotes from
one
here.
One more thing real quick about this one. If you're going to go down a list of all-time greats and in the context of work ethic, and it's intended for this Dallas audience that is outraged, maybe that guy who has that statue in Victory Plaza possibly should have been mentioned along those names. That's all.
Right, but I'm going to give him a pass. I'm going to give him a pass on listing the names. He made the point. Here's some other quotes from this interview. And by the way, owners don't give these, owners don't give these interviews every day, especially Patrick Dumont. This is not,
the old owner did, but yes, this is.
Well, the old owner used to do it before every game on the Stairmaster, which was truly an amazing time.
I don't think we'll get that from Dumont anytime soon.
Well, he was also, competing. Mark Cuban was competing with Jerry Jones, who gives 6 interviews a week.
There was a guy who actually was sitting like 2 rows behind Cuban on the baseline by the Mavs bench yesterday, and I put this on my Instagram. But these guys, they did get some signs in, and one of the signs was they had a picture of Jerry photoshopped wearing a Maverick shirt on the phone.
All right, quote. In my mind, the way teams win is by focus, by having the right character, by having the right culture, and by having the right dedication to work as hard as possible. And if you're not doing that, you're going to lose. which is basically saying that Luka wasn't doing that.
They're running the bus over Luka, who I will remind you, and all the conditioning stuff is 100% legitimate concerns. Is it reasoning to trade him at 25? I wouldn't have done it.
Can I just say, because I do these interviews all over the country, I think the conditioning, it makes it, the premise that I think a lot of people across the country, especially casuals, think is that they traded Luka because he's fat. And they're like, he doesn't look fat to me. The conditioning was one of the reasons. It was not the only reason.
Not the only reason. It was conditioning / culture, and they go hand in hand. It was a belief his body was going to break down and that they would never have the kind of culture they want with him as the face of the franchise. To say it's the only way you can win when you are months removed from this guy leading you to the finals and being the first player in NBA history to lead an entire postseason in points, rebounds, assists, and steals, you cannot just say it's the only way to win when the guy got you to the finals months ago.
Okay, I've said it all along. In Nico, we trust. You have to respect his track record. You have to respect his intellect. You have to respect his relationships and his judgment and his point of view and the way he communicates. We had a tremendous run to the finals last year, but before that year's trade deadline, our trajectory was not a playoff-bound team. Those trade moves by Nico acquired the right teammates to allow us to achieve our potential and get to the NBA Finals. He is 1,000% standing behind Nico. He is cementing himself, as Bontemps said, is in lockstep. That, and he's attributing last year's success not so much to Luka, but to the
trades by the way, they traded for these role players that fit around Luka Doncic, and who Luka Doncic was diming up for 3-pointers against the Oklahoma City Thunder when the Mavericks won that series by shooting wildly over their expected percentage, in part because Luka Doncic was setting guys up for wide open shots.
Yeah, and lob threats. And listen,
and lob threats to the rim with Daniel Gafford. Yes.
You do have to give Nico full credit for the moves that he made last year, which on this pod we were critical of, but we were proved wrong.
Was definitely critical of Kyrie. Definitely critical of Kyrie.
Yeah, of Kyrie. And honestly, we sat here and again, the reaction around
I didn't like any of those trades. I was incorrect on that.
The reaction around the league was that they overpaid for a couple of role players last year who weren't going to raise the ceiling high enough to justify it. And then they went to the finals. So yes, you have to give Nico credit. And by the way, the Mavericks, if healthy, are going to be a damn good team. Anthony, like this year, next year, the year after, Anthony Davis did remind everybody, like he's this afterthought in this trade. He's a freaking top 75 all-time player in his prime, a 10-time All-Star, multiple All-NBAs, all defense. Anthony Davis is an absolute monster. And, he's very understanding of what he's kind of walking into. He gets the heartbreak. He gets what Luka meant to the city of Dallas. But he's also a very proud guy. And he's like, you know what? I can play too. And as he said, I'm going to give the city of Dallas life back. And boy, in that first half yesterday, he sure enough did that. We'll see if it's something that can be sustained. But the Mavericks can make a deep playoff run. They're going to be an awesome defensive team, especially once Lively gets back. They're huge. They're athletic. Now, we'll see.
If healthy is also a very, very massive question because they have one guard that I would like to handle the ball in the playoffs, and that's Kyrie Irving, who's approaching 33 years old and has a bulging disc in his back. And by the way, we got the entire Anthony Davis experience in this debut, where he was unbelievable in the first quarter, great first half, started to fade in the third quarter, went down with a non-contact injury where we thought he might miss 2 months, and then said after the game it wasn't a big deal and that he's going to be fine. So, that was the entire arc of the AD experience in one 48-minute game for Mavs fans. Now that he's arrived there.
Getting back to the Demont stuff, he absolutely should be like, if you give Nico the clearance to make this move, you absolutely better stand on it, and better stand behind it. And Nico's track record, all in all, he's on year 4. There's been a conference finals run. There's been a finals run. Those 2 years sandwiched a bizarre blockbuster trade into a tank season. And now we'll see how this year goes. But again, it's just that there's so much shock here, and part of it is just the crazy shift from making all these moves to surround Luka with a supporting cast that gives him a chance to contend. And this is a franchise that's operated for the last few years. We've got to build a contender around Luka, or he might want to leave, to this shift. And sudden, I don't know, it was, yeah, I think sudden is the right word. Shift to, we can't keep building around him. We've got to figure out another path. We've got to dump this guy. And when I say dump him, they honed in on one guy that they wanted, and that was Anthony Davis, and they got him. And again, it's a 3 to 4 year time frame. I'm quoting Nico Harrison on that. The problem is all the work you've done to build this finals caliber supporting cast around Luka, you've given up your draft, control of your draft in the first round in 27, 28, 29, and 30. If it's 3 to 4 years, you do the math and you're like, oh, so Oklahoma City, 28 swap. Houston now has that 29 first round pick via Brooklyn. San Antonio, 2030 swap. Your neighbors in the Western Conference respect the team that you've put together right now and are really excited about the future of the Dallas Mavericks benefiting them.
All right. Well, to be continued. Hang in there, MacMahon.
Read all about it in The Wonder Boy.
That's right. Pre-order now. Up next, let's check out today's Magic Moment, brought to you by State Farm. All right, we had some other news on Saturday, specifically that in the evening, I guess it was, the Lakers announced that they had rescinded the trade for Mark Williams 3 days after agreeing to it. They didn't say why, but the only reasonable way that could happen is they said that the Hornets didn't.
Well, let's just put it this way. To satisfy the conditions of the trade, there were two players involved that needed to pass a physical. One was Dalton Knecht and one was Mark Williams. And the Lakers announced that the trade was being rescinded. So that should tell you what happened.
Right. So, and by the way, it's a relatively early in the ownership process for Gabe Plotkin and Rick Schnall. They've owned the team for a couple of years now, but they haven't been out there. Unlike guys like Matt Ishbia and Patrick Dumont, who made huge franchise-altering moves within the first 18 months, or in case of Matt Ishbia of the Suns, the first 18 minutes being owner. The Hornets ownership has taken a much more slow roll. And Jeff Peterson, their GM, I guess team president, he is not, super out there. We're still learning about who they are as people, but we certainly learned a lot by the statement that the Hornets put out after the Lakers announced. I've got it right here.
Okay.
We are excited to welcome Mark back to our Hornets organization after the other team aggressively pursued Mark. We made, all right.
You could just stop there.
Yeah.
They called the Lakers the other team in the statement.
The Lakers are not mentioned.
That was incredible.
The other team.
Do you think there's going to be a lot of business done between the Lakers and the Hornets? I don't think there will be meetings at fancy coffee houses between the Lakers and the Hornets.
Well, listen, there was another interesting quote. Speaking of statements and quotes, Rob Pelinka gave a very long quote Thursday about Mark Williams' health. And look, we talked about it the other day on the podcast. Mark Williams is a talented 7-footer who has played in 40% of the games he's been eligible to play and missed a calendar year with a back issue, right? So this is an interesting quote that he gave the other day in a scrum, or Dave McMahon had in his story. Quote, "We fully vetted his health stuff, led by Dr. Chris Jones at UCLA Health and Dr. Leroy Sims on our team, and he's had no surgeries," Pelinka said. "So these are just parts of he's still growing into his body. We vetted the injuries he's had, and we're not concerned about those. We'll have a chance to have a physical and continue to do a deep dive and make sure that what we've talked about and seen in the electronic medical records are good. So we'll still have that step in the process of doing a full physical before the trade becomes official." Now, he did give the caveat that they're going to do a full physical. However, he went out of his way to say, we feel good about where this guy is at physically. And then 2 days later, they back out of the trade. It's just an interesting sequence of events.
Well, on two fronts here. One, it's a vitally important trade for the Lakers because it affects their ability to compete this year. He was their starting center, and by rescinding the trade after the deadline, the chances of them somehow, I mean, I never really think out with the Lakers. For all I know, Nikola Jokic will request a buyout and go sign there in 2 days. But the chances of them getting a frontline center now are very, very slim. And so backing out of the trade, they know that they're potentially affecting this season significantly. Secondly, it was a very expensive trade for them. Trading away the 31 unprotected and the pick swap and Dalton Connect, which, there's mixed reviews on him thus far. However, he is an asset, no doubt. Sure. And so had they gotten it wrong, AKA this guy comes in and has a series of injuries, it's potentially it's something you have to get right. At least from if you get it wrong on the player evaluation, that happens. But if you get it wrong because you take a risk on the health stuff and it blows up in your face, you really are going to have some questions. So I get why the Lakers were very cautious, but I also understand why they had to be cautious because of the stakes. But it was certainly a very, very significant development in the league.
You know what, though? Here's what the Lakers can do. They can look at Luka and say, man, we're going to get you a rim rolling big. Like, we're going to get you that lob threat. We're going to get you that guy. We were really aggressive. We were going to make this happen, but just the medicals are too bad. We couldn't do this one, but hey, we hear you and we're on it, buddy. Like, we're working together. They can do that. They can look him in the eye and say, absolutely, it's a priority, and our actions back that up.
Well, we'll see if this trade ages like the Tyson Chandler trade to Oklahoma City back in 15 years ago or so. That was one of the real what ifs of the last generation of the NBA, where if Tyson Chandler had wound up on that Durant, Harden, Westbrook team, would have been a pretty devastating group to have him out there with Serge Ibaka and those other three guys. And
that was in 2009, correct?
I believe so. That trade got rescinded because of a toe issue.
2 years later, he was the final piece of the Mavericks championship puzzle.
Yes. So maybe Mark Williams
team that went through OKC.
That's right. So maybe Mark Williams will develop into an elite, two-way center, rim running center who's a great defensive player, or perhaps he'll continue to be a guy that struggles on the defensive end and is not available a lot. I mean, there's a reason why I was pretty skeptical about the trade from the Lakers standpoint in the first place. It's a guy who definitely has potential, but he was raw, and it was a heck of a swing to say this was the guy that we're going to essentially make the centerpiece of our team around Luka Doncic going forward, and be enough to convince Luka that, hey, this is a guy that you should feel confident about anchoring yourself with for a while. So it's certainly fascinating that they went the other way on the deal now. And, Jackson Hayes starting for the Lakers at center for the rest of the year is going to be interesting to watch, coupled with, we have to see what Luka decides to do as far as an extension goes this summer. And the Lakers have limited means to improve their roster. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the offseason looks like for them in light of this decision.
Yeah, and the Tyson Chandler comp is a good one. And obviously there are some parallels there. Tyson Chandler was certainly a much more proven player at that point of his career.
Yeah, Tyson Chandler.
No question.
So the Chandler, just the history there. Tyson Chandler was playing for the Hornets. He got traded to the Thunder, and the Thunder rescinded the trade because they found something, I believe, with Chandler's foot, if I'm not mistaken.
With his toe.
And Chandler went on to play 10 more years, including a couple years later, he won a championship with the Mavericks. Am I right?
We did just say all of this, actually.
Okay. Sorry, I was distracted.
Not
He was
paying any
paying-
attention.
Hey,
Yes.
Windy
I
sleep
was.
update. Windy sleep
literally,
update. He just took a
literally
nap.
paying no attention.
In
as
all
Tim and I
honesty,
just went through all
I
of that.
am in moderate back pain right now due to a pulled muscle. I need one of those compression devices. Famously, how many years ago was it? 4 or 5 years ago?
Hey, you know
Carrie?
that hyper ice that Cassidy was pumping up when she
That's
was
what
on?
I need. That's
Oh,
what
I
I
got
need.
one, baby.
That's
The
what I need
IT
right now. My
department got
guy
me one for
Anthony
Christmas.
Katz
It
is
is
the CEO.
ice.
A couple years ago, Karis LeVert got traded. I think it was in the Harden trade, wasn't it?
Yes.
And the physical that they did after that found cancerous tumor on his kidney, I think it was, and helped potentially save his life. So I know they're not messing around. By the way, the Lakers won. They beat the Pacers on Saturday without LeBron or Luka. And Austin Reeves had 45 points in that game. And how about this for the whiz of the quiz?
Ooh.
This is an incredible stat from Austin Reeves on Saturday. So he became the 6th Lakers player in history to have a game with 45 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists. These are the other 5. Elgin Baylor,
Hey,
Jerry
no,
West,
what the whiz of the quiz is something we get.
Well, that's fine. Let him just
No.
read it off. It's fine.
Kobe Bryant.
Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Austin Reeves.
We could have gotten those. You robbed me of looking smart.
All right.
I have another whiz of the quiz involving the Lakers because it was something I was looking up yesterday because I was thinking about it. I started covering the NBA with the 2012-13 season, the year that the Nets moved into Brooklyn. How many times since then have the Lakers finished?
Diet Coke here?
No, that was the next year.
Okay.
How many times in that span have the Lakers finished in a top 6 spot in the Western Conference?
In that span?
Since the start of that season. Once is the correct answer. The year they won the title.
That's the first time Wendy's ever gotten a whiz of the quiz.
You might be right. It's only because of ESPN we're forced to lock into the Lakers whether we want to.
It is just a remark.
Hey, poor Wendy. He's forced to cover LeBron James. That's never benefited him.
It's never been a thing. It is just a remarkable it is just a remarkable thing that for especially the last several years with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, the Lakers have finished above the play-in spots in the West one time.
You know what? You know how many times Luka's Mavericks have finished above 6th?
Twice.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's once. I believe it's last year. No, I am wrong about it. It is twice. It was also the conference finals year.
Yeah, they went to the conference
started
final.
off at home.
Well, they're in 8th right now, I think.
Well,
I mean, I tell you, the West is going to be a fascinating. It's like these last 2 months are going to be wild and are going to be fun in the Western Conference. I mean, the Warriors just made this huge trade. Jimmy Butler looked great. I mean, they were playing the Bulls, but Jimmy Butler looked awesome in his Golden State debut. There, as we speak, wouldn't even be in the play-in. They're tied with the Suns, but on the outside, tied with the Suns and the Kings for that matter. You've got the Mavs at 8, the Clippers with Kawhi are right now playing team. Minnesota is starting to get things together. 1-8 out of the last 10. Houston's starting to sink. Lost 6 in a row, and including yesterday. The Lakers are getting it together. Just made a massive trade. The Nuggets are
Lakers are 9-1 in their last 10 games, are in 4th place in the Western Conference standings.
They're tied for 3rd in the loss column, which is what I'm paying attention to. I mean, it's there for them. It's just going to be hard. By the way, I don't know if anybody is paying attention to the Thunder. The Thunder have won 6 of 7. While everybody's having this,
they're 42-9 and floating under the radar. How about that?
And they just got Chet Holmgren back.
What a trade deadline acquisition that was.
And on Saturday they play without him because it was the second night of a back-to-back.
Mm-hmm.
And
Lou Dort and I believe Cason Wallace also did.
That's right. Correct. Wallace is out for the All-Star weekend. They just had to replace him in the rookie sophomore game. And they went into Memphis last night, who's been one of the hottest teams in the league, and beat them by double digits. And they have just, correct me if I'm wrong, MacMahon, the Thunder have just owned the team that's now in second, thanks to Houston's slide here, where they've kind of had come back to the pack. Memphis has a pretty significant lead on them, 3 or 4 games now. So right now it's Oklahoma City and Memphis 1 and 2 in this tightly packed West. 1 and 2 is sort of out by themselves.
Yeah, Memphis is a game and a half up on Denver.
Okay. Oh, and Denver. Yeah, that's right. Houston's all the way back to 5th.
Denver's on the rise.
Right.
Houston's fallen.
Okay.
Yeah, Houston and the Lakers are tied through 3 games behind the Grizzlies. Now they're all way behind OKC, obviously.
Yeah, Houston's lost 6 in a row, and the Lakers have won 5 in a row.
Haven't the Thunder just owned the Grizzlies?
Well, I'll say this. Last night it was the Thunder and those cheating refs that gave the Grizzlies 39 free throws and the Thunder 21, and somehow.
Well, I will say this: many people are saying that the referees lean towards the Thunder. People always are talking about how the Thunder get their favorable call.
I love it. T. Morant got kicked out of that game with a couple minutes left. For the last straw was when he yelled, "The fix is in," and the Grizzlies had an 18 free throw advantage. It was Ray Acosta and Drew Hill, who covers the Grizzlies, tweeted about this last night. Now he wasn't the crew chief, but Ray Acosta was the ref in Oklahoma City a couple of years ago. Well, you remember Ja got thrown out for making some snide comment to a fan when old Ray was within earshot. And it's funny because that Ray is well above 6 feet, but
oh my gosh,
no, but he quick trigger. He tossed Ja, and that's when T came over, and that fan felt bad. She was a Ja fan, and so T's like FaceTiming with a fan with Ja in the locker room during the game. So Acosta was part of the refereeing crew, but he wasn't the crew chief. And the crew chief is it Tiven or Tiven? Old Josh, how do you pronounce it?
Josh Tiven was the.
He's probably a shade shy of 6 feet, but he went. He heard the fixes in, and I'm sure he heard a whole lot from T that game. He went and got security and said, "You escort that fella right on out." Mike Miller, T's or Ja's agent, former NBA star Mike Miller was sitting right next to T and appeared to get a chuckle out of the situation, from what I could tell.
By the way, the Thunder beat the Trailblazers about 10 days ago. It's the only time the Trailblazers have lost in weeks.
Until yesterday.
Until yesterday. It had been the only time the Blazers had lost in weeks.
Blazers are 8-2 in their last 10 games. Only a game and a half back, actually only a half game back of the San Antonio Spurs for 12th.
And I'll tell you, old Scoot, man, like no matter how ugly a rookie season is, you shouldn't give up on a number 3 overall pick. And Scoot is starting to put some things together there.
Well, but that we also have to say it is absolutely bonkers that this Blazers team, I know they've gone on a nice winning streak lately and they've played well. It's bonkers this team went through the trade deadline and didn't move anybody. It's crazy. It's crazy
that
they didn't
loss
trade
to the
Robert
Timberwolves
Williams
on
for
Saturday.
anything.
No Ant, right? Ant didn't play in that game, I don't think.
Correct. He did not play.
Yeah, Ant did not play.
Sorry.
No, it's just crazy that they went through the deadline and didn't move any of these guys again. And they're sitting here with the same team again and have for years now.
They can't move Ayton. And
I mean, sure, but Robert Williams, they should have moved Robert Williams for whatever they could get.
Tell you what, how good would he look in a Lakers uniform?
Would have looked awfully good. Again, assuming he could play. I mean, he left Saturday's game with a knee injury, so we'll see how long he's out. But
and those Lakers physicals are very, very thorough.
Well, Rob's had enough injuries that I'm sure they would have found stuff. But look,
by the way, if you want to flunk a guy on a physical,
of course,
in the NBA, you can find him.
You can flunk anybody on a physical if you want. But yeah, it's just crazy that Portland's sitting here with the exact same team again and with all these same guys here again. And it feels like they've been in stasis for 3 years now.
Stasis is not a big word, but a fancy one. Jackson, need a definition.
Having said that, I mean, regardless how you feel about that, we never, ever, ever talk about the Trailblazers. They did stand pat at the deadline, but we should talk about how well they're playing. And specifically defensively. They've been number one team in the league in defense, I believe, since January 1st.
I
And
did not realize that.
yeah, and certainly during the last like 15 games, they've been number
They've
one.
gone 10-2. They've just so people know. So they've gone 10-2 in their last 12 games, with 2 wins over the Suns, 2 wins over the Magic, wins over the Bucks, the Heat, the Pacers, and the Kings. So a whole bunch of teams that are either playoff teams or trying to be playoff teams, and been very impressive.
And Tumani Kamara, the guy that they got as sort of the throw-in.
Oh, no, that's the guy who it pained the Suns to give him up.
I
They
know.
would tell me that at the time.
It also remains insane. That entire, again, I'm not going to go back to that trade being. I'm not going back over that ground again. That trade.
Sorry for interrupting.
Well, hold on. So this is very tough last week for the Phoenix Suns. The Beal trade thing, I don't think it really ever got off the ground, but that fails. They try to trade Durant. That fails, pisses Durant off. I think is headed for a breakup in the summer. Of course, I don't know.
I would wager on that for sure.
Okay, but it doesn't look good right now. And one trade that they do make is a trade to offload Yusuf Nurkic, which was a money move, which was a smart money move because it saved him over $100 million, but also just backs up that trade was a disaster, which we talked about in the pod the other day. But part of the reason why it was a disaster, not just that they had to get rid of Nurkic with the first round pick. They did get Grayson Allen in that trade, who's been okay, but certainly not.
He's a nice role player. Yeah.
But Kamara is turning into one of the most impressive young defensive players in the West.
He's the kind of guy that every good team wants. He's a primary defender who, he's got a ways to go offensively, but developing on that end. But he's a really good, versatile defensive player.
And also, by the way, you can talk about what the Blazers didn't do. That trade for Denny Avdia has looked pretty good. He's had a nice season. Has been really good for them defensively. He's averaging 15 points, shooting the ball relatively well. I mean,
Blazers fourth in net rating and first by 2.5 points in defensive rating since they started that 10-2 stretch back on January 19th.
And when they beat the Suns the other day in 2 games with the Suns, because the Suns were so small in the interior, Ayton had a 20-20 game.
And was clearly enjoying it.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of teams that didn't do anything at the deadline, real quick, before we go to the James Harden interview, I just want to bring up the Orlando Magic, who for a long time this year were one of the best stories going, especially as they dealt with injuries to Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. Wagner was having one of the best. He was going to be an all-star, I felt. Both of them could have been all-stars. Banchero really hadn't played that much when he got hurt, but he looked great. They did win in San Antonio, or I guess at home against San Antonio on Saturday by 1. Which was a needed win for them. By the way, what's the status of the San Antonio bet?
I'm not gloating at this point. Put it that way.
I think they 1-3 since
dude. I tell you what. Did you
they're on
see
pace to win 36 games?
Did you? That would win me the bet. Did you?
Would win you the bet.
Did you see the finish in Charlotte where they also lost by 1 possession? Fox hit what they briefly thought
at the buzzer,
in 3, but he didn't get it off in time. That one stung.
The start of the De'Aaron Fox era being
by the Wonder Boys, I can afford to get Bontemps dinner.
The De'Aaron Fox era starting with escaping with a win over the reeling Atlanta Hawks and then losing on back-to-back nights to the Charlotte Hornets with half a team and the Orlando Magic, who have been a disaster for a month. Not exactly a banner beginning for a Spurs team that's got a pretty difficult schedule, I believe, down the stretch. And, obviously they certainly have the ability to get in the mix here for the play-in picture in the West, but I believe they're already a couple games back. And they're 3 games back right now. And those are a couple games. If they're going to make a run like that, they would like to have back, certainly.
Bro, you gotta like do your research as you're speaking on your phone because your screen is like shaking and I'm getting
Well, sorry,
more
my floor
information.
in I've had to change rooms because we're moving things around in our house for a variety of reasons, or an apartment, and the floor in this room is not great. So
Also, nobody does an I told you so tone like the USWB, Wendy. You know what I'm saying? My God.
Well, Victor had a 20-footer at the buzzer, or 2 seconds left, that could have won him the game that he missed.
thought it was
So,
going in. Got a really good look.
Franz Wagner had a great game. He had 33, but that was just their second win in the last 15 games. They're 2-13
It's two
in the
rough
last
losses for the Spurs for sure.
two. But anyway, Magic are 2-13 in their last 15. We know that they had established themselves as an elite defensive team. In this 15 games, they rank 17th on defense.
Wow.
Just completely collapsed on the defensive end of the floor. Paolo has not been playing. He lost his mojo
Yeah.
from where he was
I
before.
mean, he has been flat out rough since coming
Well,
back.
And like you said, it's really surprising because they did such a great job of keeping their heads above water
Right.
while they were without Paolo, while they were without um, Franz Wagner. And for them to go through a stretch like this is just really, really surprising.
Well,
Paolo
anyway,
Banchero's played in all 15 of those games. Orlando's offensive rating is 100 flat,
oh,
100.1, and their defensive rating is 112.1. That is a negative 12 per 100 possessions with him
that's sniffing
on the court.
Wizards territory.
Now,
Yes.
I will point out there has been one major, major hole in the lineup during this downturn. I think we're
I
finding
was about to set this up, but go ahead.
well, I think we're finding out just how important Jalen Suggs is to the Orlando Magic.
Jalen Suggs has played one game and 16 minutes across this stretch, and his net rating in those 16 minutes was 36.3. Obviously, it's just 16 minutes, but every other guy on the team over this stretch is negative, literally. And yes, to MacMahon's point, I think we are learning the vital importance of Jalen Suggs to this Orlando Magic team.
But the point is that this team has got expiring contracts. It's got all kinds of draft assets. And yet again, this is a team that was crying out for an offensive input or offensive influx. And they went through the deadline. 4 teams didn't make trades at the deadline. Okay. Some of them was because they were stuck in the apron, like the Timberwolves didn't make a trade. They had a little fantasy discussion with the Suns about Kevin Durant, but it's because they had nothing better to do, because they're second apron team. The Magic have all the flexibility and everything in the world, and they just sat there and didn't do anything. I talked to and Jeff Weltman, their GM, almost never does anything at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
He 4 or 5 years ago, he did those trades where he traded Vucevic at the deadline, and he traded Evan Fournier at the deadline. Those were sale. They were selling. They were starting their rebuild. They haven't made a talent acquisition trade at the deadline in 6 years, which was when they traded for Markelle Fultz, which is really picking a player up cheap.
Yeah.
They just don't do it. I talk to teams who talk with the Magic, and I say, hey, do the Magic do they have like conversations? And they're like, yeah, if you call them, it'll be a real trade conversation, but they don't make calls. They take calls and they don't really engage. I mean, he doesn't want to do it. Like, obviously it's not like it's just something he doesn't do. He doesn't do trades, and that's fine. But like, your team is in free fall. You have the ability to do it. And now they're in the play-in zone now. This is a team that was competing for second or third in the East at one point, is now in the play-in zone.
The other way to look at it, I'm sure that the way that they're looking at it is they are building around 22-year-old Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, who is 23 years old, and Suggs is kind of the old head of the trio that they're building around, and he's all of 23, so a couple months older than Franz. So they are still a very, very young core, despite the fact they've been in the playoffs. You can say they're still kind of early in their developmental phase. But, they've shown enough that they've got the chance to at least be a playoff team? And, do you want to amp that up and give them a chance to do some damage? Because certainly doesn't look like a team's going to be able to do any damage at this point.
Like I said, the Paolo numbers during the stretch have been rough. They're 14 points per 100 better with Franz Wagner on the court than on the bench during the stretch. They're 6 points worse per 100 with Paolo on the court than on the bench during the stretch. And Paolo's played most minutes of anybody on the team. And, over these last 15 games, during this stretch as the team has been struggling, he's shooting 40% from the field and 25% from three, and has almost got a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. So
yeah, he got off to such a great start, and then the oblique knocked him out for a while. We've talked about it before. The efficiency has always been something that needed to
the question mark.
And it's also like, find a big time scorer at the age of 23. That's almost always going to be the case, with rare exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, if their ownership, Dan DeVos, is if he's got him sold on it, that's all that matters. If your ownership supports, I'm sure their fans would love to see an influx. But if that ownership is on board with that slow boil, then that's fine.
Hey, OKC went through a slow boil. And
true.
I mean, they really did. Like last year,
2 years.
Sure. But even last year, like they didn't take a big swing in the trade deadline. They acquired freaking Gordon Hayward. And the best thing you can say about that is it freed up cap space to get Hartenstein this summer. Right. Wendy, we skipped over it though. You mentioned on NBA Today this week this notion, and you don't pull things from outer space. You're talking to people around the league, and you mentioned this.
Just to be clear, before you say this is not my opinion.
Right. This is from you talking. You talked to GM.
You have espoused this opinion on the podcast, though, I'm going to say.
Right. I have what?
You have espoused this opinion on the podcast at several points this season.
Espouse? He's been married for a long time.
He has said at several points this season the Western Conference is wide open this season on the podcast.
So, yeah, you basically said, hey, now 42-9, Oklahoma City is not feared in the West. And I'd like to hear you elaborate on that. And I've heard similar things, and I certainly heard that last year going in the playoffs, including from some folks that are within a very short drive from me.
And I think they beat them, if I'm not mistaken, the folks in the short drive from you.
Correct.
Last
time I checked.
Look, I think the Thunder are awesome. I love watching them play. You watch Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. By the way, I was watching games this week with Udonis Haslem, who was doing studio work from us, and we were watching the Thunder one night, and he's like, "It's crazy, man, that Shai doesn't sweat."
Yeah, well, you mentioned this.
It's true. And now I'm obsessed with it.
He's the coolest guy in every room.
And he, like right now, Shai is like at the top of his game. Like it's amazing to watch. And you guys know that I've been super high on Holmgren for a long time. I love his mentality. I love his makeup.
Yeah, you discovered him.
That's what I did. I was there when he was 14 years old in the gym in Minneapolis. They're not a team because of their nature, that intimidates people.
Well, when I wrote about the Thunder culture, it's almost like a Boy Scout style of culture. Like you got all these young, ambitious guys who, as I put it, they buy into the boring, and they do like the group interviews. And Draymond got on his podcast and like ripped it like, ain't nobody gonna fear you if you're doing like group interviews post game, which was, I thought, a Draymond trolling attempt. But but that's all. Like they aren't a team. They're not like a team that intimidates opponents, despite the fact that they are tough as hell. They're the best defensive team in the league by a significant margin, and they've got a guy. Shai just had a 7-game span where he hit 53 times, and it would have been 4, but they were blowing the Bucks JV out so bad that he basically chilled the whole second half.
I know, and in the game where they completely dismantled Cleveland, he scored 40 in 3 quarters.
Dude, he's outscored opponents in a quarter like 3 or 4 times in the last month.
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely slaying and not sweating. Yeah. And, and they haven't even learned, the thing about it is I think, I'm not saying there hasn't been a few extraneous possessions where this hasn't been the case, but literally Chet Holmgren until the last 3 days had never played power forward in the NBA, which is his position.
Well, that's interesting. It is. I tell you, there's also a trend about teams going big again, and the Cavs are part of this. The Mavericks now, certainly with AD starting at the 4, are part of this. The Thunder are part of this.
The Lakers are not.
Well, the last 2 champions have been built around teams that have great positional size. And I think if you look at the history of the NBA, for as much as playing small became an in vogue thing, and particularly because of the Warriors and death lineup, at the end of the day, the thing that has always won in the NBA is being able to have as much skilled size as you can at every position. And I think we're seeing that trend shift back the other way, in particular with teams really going with 2 bigs that can do a lot of stuff on the court, like Anthony Davis and Chet Holmgren and Evan Mobley and Jaren Jackson Jr. and these other 4s that can do all this stuff. It's not exactly going back to like
Aaron Gordon
Charles
was
Oakley.
Freaking awesome in that playoff run, including the finals.
Correct. I mean, that was, again, we hit on that a ton on the pod, and you were on that from the beginning, Brian, having Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon and Nikola Jokic in the front court, all at 6'10" or bigger, and then KCP and Jamal Murray are big guards.
Yeah.
Like, that was a team that was built around positional size. The Celtics are a team, their starting lineup, their guards are big, their wings are big, they're playing a couple 7-footers, they're playing them together sometimes. Like, that's been the way the league has shifted in general. And look, for as far as the Thunder goes, let's go back to the Celtics last year. Let's go back to the Nuggets the year before that. Like, until a team breaks through and wins a title, everybody is going to look at a team and say, well, they haven't done it yet. Here's why they're not going to do it again. And then when they win, you go back and say, oh, they were always going to win. That's been the nature of how this has always worked. And that's the challenge that the Thunder have to overcome over the next few months.
So on Saturday night, Aaron Wiggins, who is...
he's really having a hell of a season.
Who you would have said at the beginning of the year wasn't one of the top 7 players on the Thunder?
Sure, he's somebody. Yeah, you just say he was like the 9th or 10th man.
He's back end rotation player.
Yeah. He had 26 and 11 in Memphis in that game. Last week in a game against Sac, he had 41 and 14. Against Toronto last Friday, he had 18.
Just another Thunder developmental, home run type of.
By the way, here's Aaron Wiggins'
overall pick.
Here's Aaron Wiggins' contract the next 5 seasons. This year, he's making $10.5 million. Next year, he's making $9.6 million. Following year, he's making $8.8 million. The following year, he's making $7.9 million. And then in 2028, 2029, after his salary in 27-28 is 4.2% of the salary cap, the Thunder have a team option for another $7.9 million that at that point I think will be under 4% of the salary cap. For a two-way wing, for a two-way wing who can play guard multiple positions, can hit threes, can do all sorts of stuff. And it's important because they got 3 guys who are going to be making max or near max salaries. In Shay's case, a super max salary.
Yes.
And that's how you have playable depth around those guys, by signing guys like him and Isaiah Joe and these other guys to long-term descending cheap contracts that give you depth and flexibility around them going forward.
55th pick in the 2021 draft.
Yep.
Who they control through age 30.
Meanwhile, Lou Dort was undrafted. Same thing. Isaiah Joe was a late 2nd-round pick by the Sixers, who was cut and picked up.
They claimed him on waivers. They
right?
claimed him on the waivers, yeah.
I mean,
by the way, Jackson looked up the number. They've won 7 in a row against the Grizzlies.
And we're assuming that Shea will be there. We're assuming he'll get the Supermax. We're assuming he won't be traded around midnight on a Saturday night. I would have assumed all those things about Luka.
I made a joke. I made a joke on TV last week that said on June 30th that their Oklahoma State troopers are going to flank Sam Presti as he walks into Shea's house holding the super max contract paperwork.
Yeah,
Now,
I
I
would
will
stake my
say-
life on Shea being part of the Thunder. Going
I will
forward.
say I've done a lot of reporting over the years on all the things, the reasoning now for a trade that still shocked me with Luka. I've never heard a single concern about Shai Alexander's conditioning or approach or anything like that.
He doesn't sweat.
No, I think they're pretty comfortable with the no, he sweats. It's just behind closed doors to get ready to not sweat during games.
Well, I would just say that I report what people say, and I believe that the West is open, but I
don't believe
No.
the West is open.
I say that, and I do not want.
I'm going to say this
Let
right
him
now.
finish.
Well,
I do not want anything to be taken away from the awesomeness that is the Thunder.
I'm going to say this right now.
I have my
The
hotel
Thunder,
reservations for the finals booked in Oklahoma City.
okay, you keep saying the West is open. The West is not open. If the Thunder don't make the finals, it's a massive disappointment. They are quite clearly the best team in the West. They've been quite clearly the best team in the league all season. It's not really close. Now, obviously, if they have injuries...
This is a pivot for you because you've been the one saying you don't think they've got enough on offense. So I think you've been more questioning them than I have.
I am not. I am curious to see what ultimately it looks like in the playoffs when they get to the end. And I do have concerns about them winning a title with Jalen Williams as their secondary creator on offense because he has struggled in that role at different points. But look, I think their biggest competition to win the title is Boston. I think they're better than everybody else. And the Western Conference, all of these teams are flawed in the West. And the Thunder, yes, they have some flaws on offense. They have a net rating of 13. They are quite clearly the best team. It's not really debatable. And yes, the Thunder like to talk about going from breakfast to brunch to lunch to dinner and moving along. But
it's a 5-course meal at this point. Stop it.
They have potentially the MVP of the league. We might be getting an update this week on where that sits. And they've got the deepest roster in the league. You just mentioned Aaron Wiggins. They've got talent up and down the roster. Now they've got Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein playing together for the first time. They should be in the finals for the first time since 2012. And if they're not, it's going to be a disappointment.
Well, we already have plans, Wendy. You're not aware of this, but the old Pink Parrot opening back up as the GOAT. Going to be a hell of a sports bar, 50 big screen TVs, and we're going to have at least an informal pod event there, Wendy. And you're required to
during the finals.
You're required to attend during the finals. Shall the Thunder do their part? The Chet stuff's fascinating, though. The Thunder. First of all, they gave the Mavericks the toughest series during the Western Conference playoffs last year by far. That series, it went 6 games, but the final cumulative score was even. There were 2 things that got the Thunder beaten in that series. 2 flaws on their team. Obviously, Thunder killer PJ Washington was also a big thing. But the biggest flaws, they got manhandled on the glass, especially in Game 6 when Derek Lively II absolutely dominated. And they had just this weird, funky fit with Josh Giddey, who they ended up benching him in the series, and it was just a poor fit. They turned Giddey into Alex Caruso, a phenomenal fit, an elite defender to add to their mix of elite defenders, maybe their 3rd best perimeter defender, as good as he is, which is a mouthful. And then they went out and they got Hartenstein, who is just an awesome rebounder, fits everything that they do. And now Hartenstein and Chet had not played 1 second together aside from preseason until the other night. Now they've got 30 plus games to figure out how that fits, how that works, how they want to handle it in rotation, how much, they started them together. I bet you that's going to continue. How much, because the 5th starter has been a game-by-game decision all season long. How much will Chet play 5? How much will he play 4? It was interesting. The other night when he came back, they played him with Jalen Williams, J. Will, what's now the basic 3rd-string center. They played him with J. Will a lot. And what that tells me is they really want Chet to get as many minutes as possible playing power forward to get those reps under his belt. Look, tiny sample size against the Toronto Raptors and all that, but Chet and Hartenstein played 15 minutes together. The Thunder were plus 13 in those minutes. But they've got 30 games to make that work. And clearly the favorites in the Western Conference, despite, to your point, Wendy, not necessarily being feared.
All right, real quick before we get to James Harden, point something out about the Celtics this last week. Won in Cleveland strongly. I mean, it came down to near the end, but they flexed their muscle. Then went into the Garden on Saturday and slapped the Knicks across the face. So even though they spun their wheels a little bit, they showed you the muscle against teams number two. They're number two, but the other two teams in the East.
And they did that especially on Saturday with both Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday not playing. And I continue to say that I think they are a team that feels like they are just trying to get through the season and get to the playoffs, much like, to reference Cavs Corner, the second edition of LeBron in Cleveland, where that team generally felt like it was on cruise control from about December until April. And then in the playoffs, it became a wrecking crew. And look,
you're around them a lot more than me. When I watch them play, I don't see them. That Cavs team had nights where they just totally didn't care. I have not seen that from the Celtics. I think they're playing hard.
Well,
I understand the general mentality.
Porzingis said it himself. They were Lions last year. They've been house cats in too many games this year.
Well, I think the Celtics are learning that it's a different thing to be the defending champions and to get the best shot from every single team every single night. And it's not the same as those LeBron Cavs teams, because for as great as Jason Tatum is, and he's awesome, and he's very likely to be a first-team All-NBA player again this season, they don't have LeBron on their team. But they are.
That last year in Cleveland, where they really wheezed to the finals, yes. They had to win 2 7-game series. I think they were 27th or 28th during the regular season in defense.
Yes, that was
embarrassing.
Yeah, I'm more talking about the 16 and 17 teams where they knew they were the best team and they were just trying to get to the end. I think the Celtics, presuming health, are going to be just fine. And look, no disrespect to Cavs Corner, but we should be looking at Celtics Thunder in June.
Hey,
I have reservations in Boston.
You got reservations in like 12 cities.
No, I have reservations in Cleveland, Boston, and Oklahoma City.
I will say I canceled my reservations in Philadelphia a while back. Hey, I'm shocked. This is the first Jason Tatum reference on the pod this year without an appearance from Steve Kerr's defense attorney. Better call Saul. Come on, where are we? What's happening?
All right. I got a chance to talk to James Harden a little bit ago. I think it was a good conversation. Come for the discussion about his mustache and stay for some good it was a good talk with James Harden. That's coming up right here, Hoop Collective. All right, James. So you've done a ton of how many commercials do you think you've done over the years? You've done like dozens and dozens of commercials.
I did. I was singing in the studio with Steph. Beard commercials, just all over the place.
I think my favorite one was the one you did with Chris Paul for State Farm, where there was a fire and like you were pretending like you didn't do it, but it was very clearly like your silhouette on the wall.
Right.
And the reason I like it is because I think Chris plays mad very well. Like he's usually mad.
He's always mad.
Right.
He's always mad. That was a really good, by the way.
Super Bowl commercial. Have you ever had a Super Bowl commercial before?
Yeah, I have. But like it's been a minute, obviously, but this one is it's a little bit more special, like Pringles is elite, when it comes to crisp. They've been around for a very, very, very long time. And I think it was just it's dope, man. Like I'm excited about the spot.
I like you're a man of the world. You'll call them crisps. Like it's very international.
Yeah, you gotta be, I'm global a little bit, so you gotta
right. I know.
A little bit.
I know you spent a lot of time in Europe. I think you've got the facial hair market cornered. It's actually kind of a miracle it's taken this long for Pringles.
It's over. There's no more.
You're done. You're done with it.
There's nobody that can, facial hair.
Yeah, but it's always kind of cool to be involved in the Super Bowl, right? Because now you're going to be talked about for several days.
Yeah, it's fire. It's like that's like the biggest weekend when it comes to football, and just to be on TV, being in a spot with Pringles is elite. It's like another level of attention, which I love to be a part of when it comes to things like this.
So if you could, in your 30s, James Harden, go talk to in your 20s James Harden, what would you say to him?
I don't know, because I do things and I live. So I wouldn't be having to look back and regret or feel like I'm missing something, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're saying you don't have regrets, but like your game has evolved a lot. Like
Yeah.
so I feel like you've been somebody who does focus on evolution. So like
Even like when I was like a little kid, like I always can like shoot, but I couldn't do anything else. Like I couldn't move for real. Like I was just a shooter, like a spot in the corner shooter. And then, as I started getting taller and, able to move a little bit more, even in college, like my handles wasn't that great. It was good, but it wasn't great. And I think just putting in the work and trying to figure out ways to get better, I guess. But I don't know. I think just I don't know, every aspect of my game, I feel like I've gotten, better and elite at a lot of things.
yeah, but yeah, okay, there's a lot of guys who can dribble, but your footwork,
Yeah.
your footwork is,
That's the separation right there. That's the difference. That's the difference.
yeah, because I feel like that's, your ability to position your feet, like that was a real skill that you developed. Like, that
That's that's everything for me. Like my footwork is how I get past people and how I create the advantage and do all these other. That's like my probably my greatest skill for real.
do guys, do younger players, like, do they ask you stuff like that? Do they ask you like what to work on?
Yeah, they asked me like, how do you draw fouls and how do you step back? And it's like, it's more than just that.
Do you like giving advice to younger
Yeah.
players? Because you're kind of like you're
Don't
getting up there, man. Sorry to say.
see. I knew you was gonna say that.
Yeah, well, it's true.
Well, it is true, but you didn't have to say it. Anyways, um, yeah, like I love giving advice. I love being a leader, like especially the guys that we got now. Somebody like Jordan Miller, who's left-handed and kind of crafty. Asked me a lot of questions about footwork and things like that. So, I love to give advice, and help players.
What do you think about like people talking about the game? Like they're kind of criticizing the game a little bit. It's kind of a popular thing right now to say too many threes or whatever. Like, or like just like people think the game is messed up or out of balance. I mean, I mean, you've been around a while now. You've been through some eras. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't want to, and I never want to feel like the old guy. But it's like there's not a lot of vets on each team. So like they don't have the experience. Like when I was coming in, you had Nazi Muhammad and Kevin Ollie and Nick Collis, and you had like vets to show you and show you how to be a professional, and then show you how to work and show you how to be like all those things, and there's steps to it. And right now it's just a lot of young guys, and I get it, like young guys, they want to, you know, they want to take a chance on them and things like that, but they don't know how to like be a professional. They don't know how to work. They don't know how to, and so now a lot of guys are in the NBA for a couple years, and then you no longer hear of them, and it's like that's what the NBA wanted, or that's what people wanted, and I don't know. But when the threes was falling and the excitement was doing it was no problem. So it's like I feel like it's a lot of things that's wrong with it, but like what am I gonna do to change it? You know what I mean?
No, I know
So
you can't do anything to change it. I just think you've got perspective on it. Like,
yeah,
you
it's a
you were
lot.
part you were
It's a
part of
lot.
the analytics movement. In all honesty,
Facts. But I try to play the game the right way. I really didn't think about the analytics like that's what the the guys in the front office that's their job. I just try to play the game the right way and figure out what pieces we had on the court to make them better, if that makes sense. And so the analytics were kind of, now they blowing out of proportion. Like analytics is literally everything. And if you don't play by the analytics, like, you don't have a chance of winning, or we don't like this player because he doesn't fit our analytics. And there was times where they was saying analytics was important, and I'm like, no, 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 we need to get him, and he helped our team. And then like the front office was wrong, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
there's negatives and positives to it. There's pros and cons, but like I said, I just go out there and try to do my job the best of my ability.
So when I've been around the Clippers this year, several people have talked to me about the odd couple, and you're part of the odd couple along with Jeff Van Gundy, because they talk about how you guys really, really have bonded and get along and like work together. And
He leaves notes in my locker. He texts me. It's like a relationship for real. Nah, he's great. He's been great though. He's definitely like he's one of a kind in a great way. Like he knows the game of basketball. Like really well.
So, but you guys had some relationship back in Houston, right? When, he lived there and you were playing there. Like you had some
Yeah, but
connection back
not
then.
really though. Not really. He was, we see each other, but we didn't have each other number or anything.
Yeah.
And we just like it was like love at first sight. We like hit it off. He really helps me, man. Like even like he's able to talk to me and put me in my place, and correct me and help me with things. And I respect him a lot. So like it's like a real partnership.
In a way, you're kind of similar because you both are kind of like showing people that like you still got it. Because like Van Gundy, he couldn't get a job. Like for years, people would want to hire him to be a head coach. And he was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then he kind of wanted a job and he couldn't get one. And now, he's back in it. And like people thought maybe you were past your prime. And this year, you're having a great year,
Right.
all-star level, and, really leading the Clippers to a surprise season. I feel like you kind of guys are kind of doing some of the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and I don't know why. I don't know why he couldn't get a job. Like, especially being around him and like his energy, the work he puts the work in. Like, he has us prepared every single night. That's one thing. But like his energy, his excitement, like he's one of those guys where you come to work and you love to be around him because he's about his work, but then he's funny too. So like, that who love like you love that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know why he couldn't get a job, and then I don't know why people overlook me like I haven't been doing this for a very long time. Like I'm not, like I can't lead a team still at this age. So, but people are gonna have their perspective or their opinions or whatnot, and it is what it is. Like,
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, when you left Houston, you had two stops where it didn't work out. Like there were many ways
not
reasons
because
it
of
didn't
me,
work out. I would agree with you. But like
but
that's what tarnished your reputation
yeah,
was. And by the way, not just you, other players involved with that too. But
yep.
like it just showed in what people thought about you. I mean, like, you wanted to be traded and it took a while to get traded because it was complicated, contracts was complicated. So like,
It wasn't that complicated. Just to let you know, it wasn't that complicated. It could have been a lot easier, a lot smoother. Other people made it complicated, I agree with you. So, but back to like, I think just me always having the ability and the work ethic that I have, like the game is always going to be there if that makes sense. It's going to be there.
I agree. And then you're proving that this year. Before we go, let me just say this. You've been on a lot of teams where there was huge expectation to start the season. Like, oh, this team is a championship team. Like, definitely in Houston, definitely in Brooklyn, definitely in Philly. This team that you're on now, the expectations were very low. Like, like they may give the Thunder like a lottery pick. Completely different expectation. And like you and Norm Powell, who's been great, like obviously you would probably rather prefer to be on a team that may be playing in the finals, and maybe you'll pull some miracle. I don't think that's going to happen. But what has this experience
Hater.
been like?
I'm
Sorry,
just playing.
prove me wrong. Roll it back and prove me wrong. What has this experience been like? Where like it's like you've been on this team where it's like, man, these guys are like fun and refreshing.
That's exactly what it is. And it's like they work, and we're all on the same page. So like they're excited for each other's success. Like we're excited for it might be Norm one night, it might be Zoo one night, it might be me. Like that's like the exciting part about it, and which hasn't been that way in these, what I mean, in a minute. So and then now getting Kawhi back, and then and ramping him up slowly, it's like we've really believed like we have a chance to compete with anybody, with the full roster. So
Yeah,
we're gonna take
honestly, that is fair because if Kawhi's playing top level and you're playing top level, I don't want you in a one-game playoff,
yeah,
honestly.
because we're gonna get after you. And like health is a factor of any team. Like, you know what I
Right.
mean? So but if we are healthy, like take these 9 games and take this All-Star break, and then after that start ramping up, and we're gonna really figure out who we are and who we can really be as a team, and if we really got a chance at this thing, which I think we all do believe that. So I think we're all excited about it.
All right. Hey, congrats on your commercial. Thanks for your time. And hey, I'll see you in the playoffs, man.
Enjoy Paris. Don't get too crazy.
They work me too hard.
All right, B.
All right. Thanks for your time. I'll see you down the line.
All right, brother.
Okay. Thanks to James Harden. That was a good conversation. I really enjoyed it. It was a little bit ago. We had to put it on tape for scheduling purposes. So he didn't know at the time that the half the league was going to get turned upside down. But the Clippers still doing very well. Thank you for his time. Thank you to Jackson, our producer. Thank you to Bontemps and MacMahon. Thank you for watching the Hoop Collective, and thank you for watching and listening to the Hoop Collective, which is presented by State Farm. And we will talk to you later this week.
Adios, amigos.